I'm going to read to you a little from a book that I've already read and which you might want to listen to me read. It's called The Divine Illiad II by Walter Russell. And in this portion of the book, he's talking about scientific answer to sex promiscuity. And you may hear this portion and want to hear the entire book, which I will put the playlist link to in the description bar. Also, I have this book in my Google files, which are easily sent to anyone who gives me their email address to send it to. So you can have me read it, or you can read it for yourself, either way. And I hope this portion that I read will get you into wanting to know more about this, because I think this is an important subject for today. And this portion of the book is called Scientific Answer to Sex Promiscuity. Honor, then dishonor. A meritorious rise to fame frequently becomes ignoble through over-attention to sex practice. Fine qualities that have produced success become dulled by a breaking of the moral law which taints the whole way of life. The descent of an individual or a nation begins at the moment of the turning of desire away from a high moral standard to a promiscuous one. Individuals, nations, and whole world civilizations have failed from the same material cause of too much luxury, too much money, and too much easy living. These are the material things that sap the ambition of man or nation and tempt him away from the spirit of work and achievement through which he rose. Any change of desire in man automatically changes the character of his environment, his associations, and his life practices. Any such changes begin at once to reflect their pattern into the pattern of the man, or even into the national and world pattern. This is not theory, but inescapable law. High electric pressure lowers toward low electric pressure much more readily than the reverse effect. Highly developed culture follows the same law. It is difficult to rise from low standards of culture to high, but easy to fall from high to low. It is pitiful to see young people who have struggled so hard to climb their mountaintop fall back so quickly through ignorance of this one greatest danger. The aristocrat of Park Avenue will slowly become tainted with the moral, mental, and physical environment of the slums, simply by living there long enough. His language will show the change in his self-pattern. His very walk and gestures will show it, and his body will very quickly evidence it in every phase of its expression. Even the evangelist is affected by it, no matter how he immunizes his thought and actions from its influence. His countenance will change to express the thinking and actions of his electrical environment, in spite of himself. His ideas and the inherited ideas of his ancestors will also become more and more undermined, in accordance with the intensity of his relations to his environment. Add sexual relations to this, and the degeneration of his unfolding self pattern is greater through such intimate contact. With each sexual experience, the pattern of the blood cells is instantly affected, and sequentially the brain. Sex practice determines self-pattern. The self-pattern, which every man is building for himself, is the electric waveform record of what each person now is at this precise moment. It is each man's standard of his self. That standard is very difficult to raise to higher levels and very easy to sink toward lower levels. Nothing in life aids decadence so effectively as wrong mating and promiscuity, for each person either ascends or descends in body pattern to the level of the mate he chooses. This is thought This is a thought which the rather free-thinking youth of today should weigh more carefully, for today's thinking in sex practice is causing a decadence in our entire civilization, which is very noticeable in our mass culture. Our arts are already decadent. Our bodies will follow this degenerate trend in due time, unless the trend is checked. Effect of environment. Take note of natural law working out this principle on other human relations through environment. Hill-born men or prairie-born men are men who follow the sea, become hill lovers or prairie lovers or lovers of the sea, because they have interchanged one with another the electric wave forms which make each thing that which it has sufficiently interchanged. The love of hill country or sea by hill or sea-born men is not a matter of their personal taste. It is because the electric wave pattern of the hills or sea environment has interchanged with their own physical and mental patterns. The hills, the sea, and man actually become a part of each other. Remove that part and man is uncomfortable. He misses it as he would miss a finger or arm if it were removed. A clergyman who becomes a bandit will soon look and act like a bandit. Moral and spiritual patterns thus degenerate as inexorably as physical ones. If such remote contexts recreate highly cultured people into decadent ones, how much more so do such intimate contacts as sex relations degrade them. Sex defilement. Every sex relation between unequally polarized mates might be likened to a drop of ink put into a pail of pure water. The pure water purifies the ink to some extent, and to an equal extent the ink defiles the water. Impurity of both is the immediate punishment of every two unequal unions, for each becomes the other to some extent in every sex relation. The gentleman who thinks it but an accident to have sex relations with a prostitute will descend toward her level of mental ideas and physical pattern to that extent in which both have exchanged their electric patterns. The higher is pulled down further than the lower one is raised. That is the law. High spiritual levels sink more quickly into low physical ones because the lower one has less spiritual and mental powers for interchanging. The gentleman descending to the underworld soon takes on the standards of the underworld, and nature is exceedingly slow in giving his former standards back to him. The aristocrat can descend to a low level in a few years, but many lives may be required for him to reascend to the same high level. Sex with those of lower standards is an anchor which retards progress in individuals and civilizations. The instant a cultured man of high physical, mental, and moral standards has sexual relations with one of low mental and moral standards, that very moment he is spiritually contaminated. He is pulled down from his high standards toward hers, even though her physical condition is a healthy one. If his lust for such women continues long enough, it will degenerate him into a rogue which the world despises. Even occasional lapses will noticeably lower his standards. Physical examination of prostitutes does not protect cultured men from character contamination. Everything that a man has acquired during his whole past history is recorded in the pattern of his bloodstream and body cells. These cells are electrically contaminated by inharmonious waveforms of the sexed electric current. The effect upon his character is inescapable. This is as true of whole nations or races as it is of one man or a woman. Much is said regarding the equality or inequality of mankind. Equality lies only in man's inheritance from God of all he has to give. Each one of us is an equal extension of God, spiritually, mentally, and physically. Our mind is His mind, and our body is also His. Each one of us inherits all of God's knowledge, love, and power, but some are aware of it and use it more than others. Inequality is an outstanding characteristic of all creating things in nature. There is a superiority or inferiority in units of every type and species, an apple, a rose, or a man. Also, there is no exact duplication of pattern in any two units of nature. Not even two blades of grass are alike, nor two leaves on a tree. Likewise, no two people are alike in pattern, either in whole or in part. Of all the millions of people, each with 10 fingers, no two fingerprints in all of the countless millions are exact duplicates. Everything in this whole universe is a part of everything else, all being one, but each part of that one whole is either superior or inferior to other parts. Consider the fingers of a man's hand. They all belong to the one man, and all have all that he has to give them equally. But one finger can become superior to another by developing a skill with that finger through intense work that the other fingers do not have. It would be silly for the other fingers to assert their equality with the advanced one, but their equality as an extension of the man is unquestioned. The same holds true with all mankind. The efforts, ambitions, willingness to work, and other characteristics of one man makes him superior to the one who lacks those characteristics. As units of mankind, the genius and the ditch digger are vastly unequal, but as extensions of God, they are equal, for each has all that God has to give. Just as there is no equality in any two units of nature, there can be no equality in mankind, because there is no equality in the endeavor which causes inferiority and superiority of the units of man. Civilization is hard to build but easy to tear down. The bloodstream of an intellectual is hard to build into the pattern of an intellectual, but easy to dilute. The bloodstream of a genius or a man of superior mental or physical power is always the result of long-continued, balanced mating. Likewise, the purity of a racial bloodstream is the result of centuries of balanced matings. Sex interchange should not be lightly practiced. On the contrary, it is the most vitally important function of the unfolding being, for one progresses or retards his physical body and his spiritual awareness through his sex wisdom. Sex is not for the procreation of species alone, it is also for the procreation of ideal, and for the exaltation of the spirit. Misinformed people say that humans are lower than the animals in their sex relations, for animals make use of sex to reproduce their species only, while humans are claimed to have sex relations just for pleasure without any intention of breeding. Sex creates ideal as well as body. The answer to that fallacy is that animals have not yet learned to think sufficiently to create ideal. Animals are only concerned with the creation of bodies periodically, but humans think and thinkers create ideas continually. Sex is procreative of ideal as well as of bodies. Balanced sex kindles the ecstatic fires of genius and inspires enduring works in man, but not in the cow or sheep. Man is what many generations of sex practice have made him, for we are our ancestors as well as ourselves through long sex practice. Likewise, what we are, our descendants will be. That is everyone's responsibility to posterity, of which every man and woman is father, mother. Thought is electric. Electricity is divided into positive, negative waves. All thought emanations of man have the rhythmic oscillations of polarized pulsing waves. All electric pulsations are piston strokes between the two sex conditions, which polarize every wave. The universe is rhythmic. All rhythm is the result of measured repetition. Repetition is impossible except through waves. Rhythm is, therefore, the product of sex. A musical composition is but a rhythmic interpretation of one phase of the sexed electric pulse beat of nature. So is a temple or a steam engine. In order for a musician to compose, which means interpret nature and himself, he must himself be normally sex-balanced by sex-voidance in order that he can recreate and reinterpret those rhythms of nature acting through him as a living sounding board. Sex balance is beneficial for creative thinkers, for through sex voidance, by interchange of sex, the mind is enabled to be freed from the demands of the body. But woe to the creative genius who thinks that he can withstand the tearing down processes of mismating, or be sufficient unto himself, or that he can sublimate sex. It is extremely unfortunate for the progress of mankind that this fact is so little understood, for if it were better understood, he who strives for heaven would not take on little bits of hell to serve as stepping stones to heaven. He who dares do that retards his ascent to the exact extent to which he defiles his body, mind, and spirit with inharmonious sex thoughts and actions. Sex interchange is a fundamental principle of nature. It is not only necessary for procreation of species, but for procreation of ideal, because it dynamizes, stabilizes, and balances all physical and mental functions, while sex abstinence devitalizes, distorts, and negates them. And this is all I'm going to read of this in this recording, because I've already read this, as I told you at the beginning, and you can go to the playlist of the reading of this entire book, or if you let me know your email address, I can send you a file that has this book in it. And anyway, I hope that this will help people better understand the importance of right mate choosing. This is the Dove Lady, over and out for now.